to this computer. All right, cool. Is that better now that I turned off the video? My video? Hopefully it will be better. All right. We'll install node packages. Set up a basic server. Then we'll set up a basic get route. Once again, I did mention what get was, and we'll set that up. You will use NodeMon, which is a cool tool, a node package, by the way, that will restart our server when your code changes. So kind of like when you were building out your project, you had to like make your changes, save them, refresh the page. And that was a really tedious process of having to do that back and forth. What if we could set up our web server so that once we make changes, it just refreshes the page. We can then do whatever we needed to do. So NodeMon is a really cool, useful tool for doing that. And then we'll save a record of what packages our application uses. And that's really important because our application is going to be not just the server.js file, but it's going to be a collection of tools that help us build out this web server, okay? And some of those tools we even discussed during Project Week, things like Matt mentioned a tool like Moment.js, right? Something that would format the dates. I know when Christian was building out his project, he mentioned, you know, the need to like take the date and format the date. But a tool like Moment.js is a JavaScript library that facilitates that. Now take that JavaScript library like Moment.js and convert it into a node package, which really isn't all that hard. And then you can import the Moment.js library into Node. Instead of a script tag in an HTML file, you can actually import it on the back end of the server, and the server itself can process that. Okay, so just think back end is the server. As of right now, the back end really is just the server. Okay. Every site that you go to has a huge backend. All the big sites have huge backends, lots of servers running on there. And so we're going to be building that out. Okay, so I'm going to jump into node packages here. Okay, so Node.js is going to allow us to run JavaScript outside of the browser. That's really kind of what made Node this thing. Node took off because it's a streamlined version of a server, meaning it starts with very little in regards to tools to help you out. It doesn't know what you want to do. It's like, I can be a server, which means I can be a mail server, I can be a file server, I can be a web server. I can be whatever server you want me to be. And there's so many packages out there, so many tools that allow you to do the same thing. I'm going to let you decide what tool you want to install on me, and that's what I'll use. Okay, it's kind of like, you know, a manager putting together a team of people. I can choose from different people. If the same person may be a more advanced version of the other person, and the fact that they have more skills that they can contribute to the project, right? Just think of that. So when we do that, when we build onto Node, is something we call NPM. Okay, and it really stands for Node Package Manager. So we're going to use it to manage our packages. Okay, the packages that we install, we're going to use Node Package Manager to do it. And then node packages are just libraries. Libraries, or at times frameworks, and we'll describe the difference between frameworks that provide information. So if I went to nps m.js and I open that in a new browser window, okay, if we went here, these are some of the packages. I guess I have to accept you. I'm getting all of those like cookies things now. Anyone getting those? Like every time I go to a site, it's like, do you accept cookies? It must have made some huge change on the web. And so here we could search for packages, right? So I'm just going to say Moment.js. Let me see if Moment.js comes out. Let me see if they search optimally. Do we have Moment.js? I got Moment.js data formatter parser. That could possibly be it. Moment range, Moment business. So these are tools that allow you to, oh, here you go. Look at Day.js is an immutable date-time library alternative to Moment.js, right? So these libraries here are things that we can install on the server, right? Here's another one, translates Java text simple date format date to the Moment.js format, Okay, so I'm just curious if they had just straight up Moment. I don't see Moment in here. Maybe it's somewhere on one of the other pages. I would have assumed it would have been there. Another library I use is something like D3. Let me see, D3.js. Here you go. There's a big library that I use all the time. D3 is for building out data visualizations. And this library I can install on the server and use it, or I could import it as a script tag and use it. So these are the things that we can install. Maybe one Express. Express is also the server that we're going to be using today. So Express is that server package that we are going to be using today. And so we have all these things, even CORS. Look at this. Do you guys, I know some people had issues with CORS last week, right? And you needed some sort of specific URL. I think Jeremy had like CORS.io. He showed us. So we could even use a CORS middleware package. So when it makes the request, it has all this CORS support. Okay, so we have the ability to install all these packages, and we'll install them in just a little bit. Now these packages, and just say code in general, falls into two kind of categories: libraries and frameworks. Okay, a library is just a collection of tools like jQuery. jQuery is a library. It says, here's a way for you to grab elements, append elements. You can really do it any way you want to do it. I don't really care how you use it. Append's going to append. How you structure your application, that's up to you. I don't really care, but append will always do the same thing. It'll append it to the end of the thing, or prepend appends it to the beginning of the thing, right? Libraries do that, or Moment.js formats data. That's its job. It's just a tool. It's like a hammer or something, right? Or SAW. They are very specific about what they do. Frameworks are essentially libraries. I mean, it is JavaScript, and it's compiled together in this JavaScript library or JavaScript file, but it's also a framework in which you can use to build out or structure an application, right? If I went and I looked through everyone's final projects, everyone's project, I would see subtle nuances in how everyone designed it, right? It's not going to be identical. There's going to be different ways. What if I said, hey, everyone, when we build out our application for this first unit, we are going to follow this very strict, opinionated structure. You cannot deviate. These functions need to be called this. They need to be placed here, okay? And they need to be called in this sequence. You can't just do it any which way you want. That essentially becomes a framework, right? You just used a framework this morning, right? Bootstrap. That's a front-end framework. It's a layout framework. It's a framework that says if you want rows and columns, you just have to add these classes. So it structures things in a very, very specific way. So Express itself is a fast, unopinionated kind of minimalist web framework for Node. There's several other web frameworks for Node. Express is by far not the only one out there, but Express is the one that we're going to be using. And Express itself, if I just open it up, this is the package. I mean, it's just taking us back to the package, but Express itself here is here in a fast and opinionated minimal framework for Node.js. And we can build web applications. It's used for making APIs. Because it's so thin, because it really only, it itself is kind of like Node in the fact that Node only loads what it needs as a server, and then you install additional tools that make it a web server. Express is a web server that only loads the tools that you need to make it a most minimum web server. And if you need more, you then install or import that additional functionality into Express. So by default, it's just like, here's the bare minimum web server. If you want more, access this portion of me and elicit those values out. So that's Express. I'm going to start creating some files. So we can kind of get started here building out our server. Let me just pull this over a little bit. So I am in the instructor examples folder, and here I am going to touch and create, I guess, students make the first server. Touch first server. Oh, this is make directory first server. Hold on a second. mkdir first server. Let's change into first server. Boop. And there's nothing in here. As of right now, there's absolutely not one thing in our first server, right? It's completely empty. The first thing, one of the important things to do when building out your server, I'm gonna see if I can start my video. My router looks like it came back up. I'm hardwired in, so if it gets slow, just let me know. I still have my Wi-Fi connected as well. So the first thing that we need to do when we start up our server, or we want to create an application, right? The first thing that we need to do is to gather some information about our application, so that when I pass on this application to, say, Christian can look through some information and be like, who is the author of the application? What's the name of the application? What's the version of the application? Okay, and we do that by using npm init. We create a package JSON file. Okay, so there's nothing in my server right now, right? The server has absolutely nothing. And I'm going to run this tool. I'm going to say npm init. Okay, once I run it, it's going to start to ask me questions. Okay, init. Well, that's weird. No such file. Oh, because I had ls there. npm init. See how I proceeded with ls? All right, so now I'm in npm init and starting to ask me questions. It's like, hey, this utility is going to walk you through creating a package JSON file. And from this point on, package JSON files are going to be key to the success of your application. Okay, so this is something you're going to have to know and memorize and use forever while you're working with Node. And so the package JSON file, it's only going to cover the most common items, right? And just kind of like some defaults for it. So the first thing is like, hey, what's your package name? I'm just going to say first server. That's kind of the name of the app. Hey, what's the version of your app? Well, I just started my app, so I'm at version 1.0.0, right? Give me a description of your app. You know, here, you could type in anything. A lot of the times I just next, and edit it in the file. But I could say, let me see, I think I might have to put in quotes. My very first demo server. Bloop. What's the entry point? The entry point is, what's the application that's going to kick off your server? I'm going to leave it as index.js right now. Give us a test command if you want to run some commands. I don't. What's the Git repository that's going to host your application? Are there any keywords that we want to use maybe for tagging later? And then who's the author? Once again, I could say, hey, Joe Keelan's the author. Is there a license? Does this look good to you? And I'm going to be like, oh, yeah, this looks pretty good. Right? The fact that I even put in single quotes around my text, just know that whatever text you put in, it's going to wrap it around double quotes anyway. So you don't have to add any quotes. I'm going to say, hey, is this okay? Yes. Boom. And then I now have a package JSON file. This is the package JSON file. Okay. What makes it JSON? Does anyone know what makes this thing JSON?
How the data is returned to you.
What's that?
How the data is returned to you, correct?
Okay.
No.
Okay, so how the data is returned, you are correct. The data is returned in JSON format when I make a request on the web, right? You are getting your data sent to you as JSON, but what does JSON mean? Like, what's the format here that kind of like validates your statement, Josh?
Key object pairs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Key object pairs makes it an object, right? JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. And this is clearly an object with key value pairs, right? Commas separating those key value pairs. What else is something that you see here that might look kind of unique about this particular object? There is a syntax for this, okay?
Is it that everything has to be in double quotes?
Correct. Everything must be in double quotes. JSON is very, very strict. If we were trying to take away a single quote here or remove these two quotes around this, it's going to break JSON. So once we start messing with this file and start manually adding things, you're going to have a tendency to see an error or two because you might have forgot a comma or forgot to put something around double quotes and use single quotes, and boom, you're going to get an error when you do that, okay? So we definitely need to be careful with this, and we're going to see that in just a bit. Once I spin up the server, I'm going to produce some errors so that you will see those error messages, okay? Now that we have this, right? We have this. There's certain key value pairs that are not present right now, okay? We're going to see in just a minute when I install a package that there's going to be something called a dependency, right? My application requires several other tools in order to work. That's a dependency, right? So when we install dependencies, when we install any packages, I think we've done this before, you know, we've used npm install and then the thing that we want to install, okay? So the fact that you don't see it, I'm just gonna go over here so that you can see this file like magically update when I do this. Now I'm gonna do npm. Now I could say install, or I could just abbreviate it as I. So I'm gonna do the full install so you know exactly what I'm doing, and then later on when we install additional packages, I will just abbreviate it with I. I'll shorthand it. But I'm gonna install the Express package. And what you will see here when I do this, that there is going to be a new key added. Well, and here you'll see the software get downloaded. Watch. There it goes. I'm downloading it. Wait for it. Oh, here we go. Do you see this thing? Just came out of nowhere. Woo! Just came at you from nowhere. Okay, so under license, it added a new key called dependencies. And dependencies has an object as a value, and that value, the value in here currently is a key of Express and a version of the Express tool. And versioning is also important as well because, say the version of JavaScript. I think I might have shown you guys JavaScript versioning. The predominant version of JavaScript right now is 1, and yet they are on 3. But if you look, like 85% of the web is using version 1. What happens when they went from 1 to 3 is that they changed things that broke 1 code. And so a lot of developers are like, I really don't need the additional functionality that 3 is providing, so I'm gonna stay with 1. I don't wanna rewrite all my code. The same goes true for these applications, right? When this application is spun up in a year from now, and Express is like the newest version of Express, instead of 4.16.4, maybe it's up to like 9.4.1, that new version could break your code. So this tells Express, when you install, this tells Node, when you install this dependency, make sure that you get this version or higher. I think this caret sign means get version 4.16 or 4 higher, but do not get anything lower than that, okay? Because that would break our code. We need to make sure that we don't get anything lower than this. Otherwise, it could possibly break our code. And then we see here, you know, it did the install, right? npm express, it created this lock file. You'll also see here, there's another file called package.json, package-lock.json, and it's trying to like lock information about what this server uses, right? Package.json just says, I only need Express, but look what else got installed. Did anyone see the node modules here kind of appear out of nowhere too? Like this thing appeared, and look what happens when I expand node modules. Oh my God. All I did was install Express. Look what Express needs as its dependencies. Express by itself is a web server, but Express also requires several packages from the web. So it itself is a combination of other tools out there to support its need, right? It's like one thing depending on another thing, and I'm sure these things might depend on other things, okay? So here's Express itself. This is the package we installed. And Express said, man, I need a bunch of stuff. Here's my package JSON. And in my package JSON, yeah, this is going to be a lot more complicated than ours, but I need all of this stuff. I need e-tag, file handler, content. These are all my dependencies. And so you're going from your application's dependencies to this application's dependencies. You see how like the dependencies can just keep rolling along. And if we went into several of these apps, you might even see like, I don't know, maybe array flatten. If I went to its package JSON, does it have dependencies? Does it? I don't think it does have dependencies. Yeah, I think it has some dev dependencies here, it said, but I don't think it has any dependencies. But, oh no, does it? No, it's just got dev dependencies. So what you're seeing is this combination of things that are needed to support this. So that's why software development on the side of Node and Express is kind of open source in a way, because all these tools are free. I could have installed array flatten. Let me see, if I went to the NPM site and I was said, hey, array flatten, is there an array flatten? Look, there's an array flatten package. I could have installed that by itself, right? If I needed its functionality later on, and it flattens arrays. Pretty cool. Okay, this one recursively flattens an array. Just remember that, because that's like an algo later on. We have arrays of arrays of arrays, and then you have to recursively flatten them. Okay, so we have our server. Okay, before we set up a server, I'm going to pause here and have you catch up. I want everyone to make sure that they have at least a server, they've gotten a package JSON up and running, and they installed Express. I'm also going to suggest, and I know we always do this, my code and then you catch up. I would really suggest always just kind of like watching, letting it sink in, and then doing the catch up, and then doing the now it's your turn, only because this information, there's going to be more and more of it. And the more that you can be like, I think I remember it was this, and test your knowledge. So let me put in here, click on. Okay. Click on the little chart. That's for Christian, because he built out these amazing charts for his application. So I'm going to give him props. Click on the little graph chart, Christian. That one's for you, kid. 15. It's good. Good at 18. Aaron, you look so ominous. Now you got your like hoodie on. It's already kind of like that background makes you look all like you're coming in and out of space and time.
I'm freezing. Like, I don't know why. See, this is the difference between the city and upstate New York. Upstate New York is freezing right now.
Yeah, upstate New York is freezing. I went to school upstate. I went to Cortland University, and I absolutely, I hated it because it was so cold. It was like abnormally cold to the point where did all the snow come from? Does it snow like that all the time? Or like, I was like, I should have went to Miami University or San Diego.
I mean, considering we had snow, what, not even a month ago, and it's April. So, you know,
It's just cold. I don't like the cold.
I hate the cold too. This is totally why I'm considering moving for this career.
This career will allow you the potential to go anywhere you want to go. I was going to reach out to some of the other campuses and see, maybe I can go to Dallas and Austin and teach a class down there, live there for 3 months, go to Atlanta, teach there.
It's funny you say that because I was actually thinking Texas too.
Texas, yeah. Austin, Texas. I think we have one in Dallas too, yeah. Looks like we got 20. Looks like we're getting there. $21. Sweet. We're almost there. I think almost everyone's there. Well, I'm just waiting for maybe the last few to come around with the install. What I'm going to show you is this. The fact, you know how important this package JSON is, right? So my server right now has all the node modules it needs, right? I mean, I installed Express, and Express said, I need all of these other stuff. Now watch what happens if I delete my node modules folder. So I'm going to like, here's my node modules folder, and I'm going to like, boop, move it to trash. And I'm like, man, all of the stuff that Express needed, even Express, is now gone from my machine, right? If I try to run a server that had Express, it would break right now because it's like, I don't even know what to do because you don't really have Express. So what I could do now is just, if I did npm I or install, either one works, okay? If I just do npm I now, watch what happens. It's going to take a look at my package JSON and re-download all of those packages immediately. My package JSON is going to be coming back. And there we go. It came back. So what happens is, and I'm showing you this for a reason, because when you ultimately push your code up to GitHub, you will not include node modules. Because when I download your application, I will run npm install, and it will go online and download those modules instead of GitHub or Git Enterprise being bloated with all of these modules that don't need to be there, right? That's a lot of space. I don't know how much space this is, but that could be a lot of space depending on the packages. All right, so it looks like we're good. I'm gonna kind of keep going here. Run our server, right, all right. So now that we have the server, right? So now that we have this thing, I'm gonna go into, I'm gonna create a file. So here, I'm gonna touch server.js. So package.js is something that we created, and I'm going to touch server.js. Okay, this is our server file. This is the file we're going to use. And I'm intentionally making it different than the main file here because I want to show you something later on. So now that we have this server file, I'm going to go to server.js. Now I'm in server. There's nothing in here, right? I am going to import or instantiate an instance of Express. So I'm going to say const Express is equal to require Express. So this is something also. I'm just going to put the semicolon there. Once again, I'm not big on semicolons. I see it. I'll use it. It's one of those kind of, should you use semicolons? Should you not use semicolons? That's a debatable thing. There's so many tools now that just fill in the gap with semicolons. And if that's the case, why would you need to like make sure they're where they need to be when the tool is going to do it for you? You know, just more efficient. So this require keyword, right? Think of require as when we were doing classes, right? I know someone constructed a game class. I forgot who it was. Maybe it was Jose. Was it Jose? Somebody constructed a game class. What was the keyword that you did to instantiate a new instance of a class? Anybody remember? We did cover classes, though, right? New. Oh, so we did cover classes. All right, Jeremy. New is the keyword, right? And new grabbed an instance of the class and instantiated a new instance of it, correct? Require here is what we use to import the library. Okay, so we're importing the library here, and now we have access to the library inside of the express variable. And so if we went and said, hey, I'm gonna console log and say, hey, this is express, and then console log it, I'm gonna run my server now. I'm gonna go here, just gonna clear the screen. I'm gonna say node server JS, right? Okay, and so I get, this is express. So what is express? Keyword's right there.
Way to
What
create
is-
an application.
All right, so it's an application, but what exactly is express? Like, this is express. So I'm gonna put a
function.
Yes, it's a function. So I'm gonna get rid of this again. I'm gonna clear the screen. I'm gonna run it. Express. Oh, I didn't save it. Express is a function. Okay, it's not a class. Once again, I was just kind of throwing in there the new keyword so that if we could recall new being used to instantiate something new. We are returning back a function. That's what's inside of Express right now, okay? If we want to use Express, well, then we have to call the function, right? Otherwise, all that's stored inside of here is a function. And what you're starting to see now, and this syntax here is important because we're going to see this in a little bit. Request, response, keyword next. We're not going to do it yet today, but next is also something we'll learn about. And then this is the app. And what is it returning? It's returning app. And it initializes app, and then it returns app. So app is really a subfunction. Look, this function has another function, and it returns the other function. It's like a function within a function, okay? I don't want to delve into this. I just want you to see Express as this thing, okay? So it's not like this mystery what this is. If you're going to write applications at some point in time on your own, and you're going to use a design process, this is a design process, to have a function return another function, higher order functions. All right. So we have this, and we console logged Express. Awesome. Now that we know that what Express is, I'm going to just comment this out. I am going to instantiate a new application of Express. Const app is equal to Express parens, because we are instantiating or calling the function. Now I've called the function. So if I was to just console log this is app, let's see what we got. Okay, this is app. Doesn't look like it's a whole lot, right? Not a whole lot going on here. It's just a function that takes in a request and a response. We also have this next keyword, and the next keyword is to kind of like daisy chain methods, kind of like you did with jQuery. I could do .css, I could do .add class, all in one long string instead of breaking them down into separate things. Next allows us to pass on the result of what we have to the next thing that's waiting for us. So we have this, right? Now, the first thing that we say is like app.handle, request response. What we're going to create now is our first route. And that's the key word here, a route. Okay, so I'm going to say app.get. What's the route? Well, our server is going to listen to whatever port it's listening in on, and this is going to be the base URL. Okay. It also takes in a callback function, okay? Kind of like when you were doing click events and such as well, right? This is going to take in a request. I'm going to type it out the long way, and then I'm going to abbreviate it later on. These could be called anything you want. What's really important here is that the first argument is the request, and the second one is the response. That's how it's hard-coded. That's how this function was created, that the first thing is always going to be the request portion of our communication, and the second one is going to be the response. Most times people wind up abbreviating it as request, rec, and res. Okay, so I'm going to do this. Now, we get a request in, and I have to respond. The next keyword here is response.send, and we're just going to say, hello world. That's all we're going to say. Hello world. I'm going to stop adding those semicolons. Awesome. Now, if I was to run this, we still have one line of code. If I was to run this right now, let's just see what would happen. I'm going to clear out all my messages. I'm going to run this server. It started. I don't really see anything here. I'm going to go up to my browser here and say local host 3000. Let me just say, I get nothing. Site can't be reached. Server refused. And the reason is this. My server right now is not listening in on any port. Now, I said the HTTP protocol, that communication for web server, needs to be listening on a certain port. We're not listening in on a port right now, so I have to tell my server what port I want to listen in on. So I'm going to do app.listen and give it a port number. Okay? There's lots of port numbers that we can use. Some port numbers are set aside for predefined protocols like HTTP, SMTP. These protocols are already configured on certain ports. Okay, port 80. Does anyone know what port 80 is used for?
HTTP, like general web servers.
Yes. What about 443?
Secure
Yeah.
web servers.
Yes. Okay, cool. So we're just listening on 3000. 3000 is kind of an open port. Nothing is listening on port 3000. We're just saying we want to listen in on that. So I'm going to save this. You go back here. I'm going to kick the server. Now look, the server did not just go to the next line. Earlier, before I added app.listen, it started and then it went right to the next line. Now we're kind of stuck here. I'm like, I'm waiting for it to kind of return something, and it doesn't. So now if I go to my server and I say, hey, localhost, and I hit it, look what I get. I get hello world. Okay? Localhost is really an IP address on my local machine that it is translating. Okay? You're all going to use localhost, but the actual address for this would be something like 127.0.0.1, and it should take me there as well. Okay, remember when I had said IP addresses need to be translated into something we understand as a word? Localhost is the word. 127.0.0.1 is an IP address that your machine uses to kind of talk to itself at the network level. It's called a loopback address, and it's like, oh, you want to talk to yourself to test your network connectivity is working? Then we're going to use the loopback. Okay, I'm just going to use localhost. I just wanted to show that to you. So I'm going to use localhost. Didn't break anything. Here's our server. Now that my server is up and running, if I want to stop my server, this is important. It is Control-C to stop the server. Control-C. So I'm just going to put here a note. CT Control plus C will stop your server. Okay? My server stopped. If I refresh the page, my server no longer listens. It's important that you understand that this Control-C is used to stop your server and not, now watch what happens. If I get, oh, because I forgot this. If I start my server and I refresh, and instead of doing Control-C, maybe I do Control-Z. Okay, I did Control-Z. Look, my server is still running, but it released the terminal window. which means my server is running. How do I stop the server? Because Control C isn't going to stop it right now. Okay. In this instance, if you did this, I'd have to go to Activity Monitor on my Mac, and I'd do Command spacebar, go to Spotlight. I'd type in Activity Monitor, and in Activity Monitor, I would have to, at this point in time, just open up on my other, I would have to find node, see here, and then I'd have to stop it. I lost the ability to force it to stop in the terminal. I have to stop it as a process. So I'm just going to force quit it, node will disappear at some point in time. And then if I start my server again, it'll start up again. I refresh the page, and we're right back with our server. Okay? Just a handful of lines of code. That's all we really needed to do. Had a handful of lines of code, and we have our first web server up and running. Okay? So let's do this. I'm going to let everyone catch up to this. Put in the
So Joe, this is basically what we're doing here is what we did on mine when I had all those issues. This is just creating it from scratch.
Yes. Well, when we did yours, we installed a node package. Remember I said there were several node packages that to install? The one that we installed or that Matt installed was on your machine, you already had Python installed.
Right.
But I use also HTTP server, which is a zero configuration web server. It just spins up. We're installing a configuration server, like a server that we are going to configure.
Okay.
All right. Put a little summer happy face there. I'm going to also do this. It's 12:24 now. Why don't we take a 10-minute break also? I got to get some water. So why don't we come back at 12:34? Yes. Come back to 12:34. There we go. Why don't we do that? Gonna get started in 1 minute. Hmm. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so where we left off, I think everyone's good. Is anyone having any issues, errors, anything like that? Server starting up fine. Cool. All right. As long as everyone's not having problems, awesome. Most of the time, it's just going to be a typo or something at this stage because there's not too many lines of code. So let's jump back in here. And okay, so we did stopping, starting the server. So what is, let me see where we were. We were right here, right? Okay. So I'm going to go up here and just add a comment here to say that these were our dependencies, right? These were the things that our application is dependent on, where it requires Express. It requires us to instantiate a new instance of Express, right? And then we set up routes, okay? This was our first route that we were going to be listening for requests on, okay? And this is the port our server is listening on, okay? We can change that number at any point in time, but you cannot have two servers on the same machine listening on port 3000. If you do, you're going to get an error message saying that that port's in use. And that just means that the server is already up and running. And you could see that if I did this. Now remember, if I do Control Z, it does not stop the server. It only frees up my terminal. So I'm going to do Control Z. All right. And then I'm like, oh, man, my server's not running. So what am I going to do? Sure. I'm going to run node server.js, right? I'm going to start my server. And guess what happens? Boop. I get this wacky error message. Now, of course, I've seen this a billion times, so I know what to look for. See this? That is the message that you are looking for that states another server is already started and listening on that port, okay? I'm going to put that here just as an error, okay? So you see that, okay? Cause another server is listening on that port, okay? Just so that you know. So what I'm going to do now, obviously my server's running, and the only way to stop it now is to go to Activity Monitor and find node, and I did a search for it, and I'm going to stop it. Force quit node. Node should go away any second. It should stop. And then if I go down here, I'm going to Control K to get rid of everything. If I go up, it should start fine. All right. So just be aware that that error is something you will see constantly. Lots of times when I'm just getting started with Express, I start up multiple servers and I'm like comparing the two. If I change this thing to 301, it would have worked just fine. Okay. Another port number is just fine. Okay. In our route, we learned that request is the incoming request from the client, okay? Response is our response, or the server's response, okay? We can create multiple routes. So I'm going to say I'm going to create another route. App.get, that's the keyword. I have to tell it what I want, / and I'm going to say some data. I want to go to the route that has some data. Cool. I am going to do the request and the response, but this time I'm going to do it as rec res. Okay, that's just shorthand. They represent the same things here. I'm just doing it as shorthand. Fat arrow, curly brace, and now I need to respond. Res.send, and we can say, here is your info, right? Whatever you want to send, this is where you're going to send it. I could send it here. Now, I could also send it like this. Watch. I'm gonna do this first. You see how hello world, and I'm actually going to send it as an H1. Watch this. The browser will be able to interpret that as HTML once it's received. So I have two routes. I have a get route and I have a / that, and this get route is just listening on the default path. And then I have this one that's listening on / some data. I'm going to go back to my server, right? Now, these changes have not taken effect because I wrote them while my server was started. So if I go here and I'm like, all right, let me refresh. Look, that works. But if I go here and I say some data, my server's like, what? That doesn't work. Okay, you see that error? Cannot get some data. You know what I'm going to do with that? I'm going to stick that in our little error file so that you know that the route some data does not exist. Okay? The server's trying to tell you, you're trying to get something on a route, and I don't even know where that route is. You're asking the wrong person. Now, I explained that it's doing this because I made changes to the server, and the server needs to be spun up. So even though it wasn't saved just before, I just saved it. The server is hard-coded now, and it's like, whatever, when you configured me to start up, this is what I had. If you change stuff later on, guess what? You got to restart me. Like, I don't know that those changes took effect. So I'm going to Control-C. You can see it here, right? Control-C. I'm going to start the server again. Awesome. I'm going to go back here and refresh the some data, and here is the info. Now, you see the difference between this, the way that looks, and the way, I just want to copy this. You see the way that looks and the way that looks? That's huge. That's not. And the difference is this one is returning HTML, and this one is returning plain old text, which is going to have a pixel size of 16 pixels. This is an H1, which I believe has a pixel size of 32 pixels. Okay? So res.send can be used to send HTML content. So, you know, essentially I could wrap up the whole HTML, the body, everything, and like send it over to you. This is not, as you can imagine, this is not how we're going to be doing it. I'm not going to create my web page and have it rendered here using res.send. That is not what we're going to be doing. We have a templating system that we're going to be using, and we're going to use that. Separate files that have like HTML inside of them, and then we just kind of aggregate them. But I just wanted you to see two errors and the fact that we can send HTML text as well. Okay. The other thing I just want to kind of maybe console log here is if I console log and say this is rec, this is the request, and I'll even, oh, what happened there? This is rec. I'm going to stop my server, restart my server. I have to hit this route in order for this thing to kick off. And if I hit that route, right, that had this, boom, here you go. This is it. This is the thing. I'm going to try to go all the way to the top because there's a lot of info here. What type of thing is this? Can anyone tell me? Rec, this thing right here is this thing right here. What does that look like? Can anyone tell me what that is?
Object.
Yeah, it's an object. Correct. This is an object. Curly brace, key, value pairs. An object that even has another object nested inside of it. It's also an instantiation of a custom class that they created called incoming message. They created a class called incoming message, and they've instantiated a new instance of that class. And then if I do console.log, this is response, right? And I do, so annoying. Response. I'm going to do this. I'm going to control K. I'm going to stop my server because I added something and my server needs to be stopped and started. And if I do this and I hit that route, we go all the way to the top. Look, incoming message now. Okay. Oh, you know what? I didn't get rid of that. So it's incoming message. I'm going to get rid of all of these, stop my server, restart the server, hit this route again, and now I'm going to go back up. Look at this, server response. Okay, the first one was incoming message. This one's server response. And they're both objects. I'm just pointing that out. The structure of Express itself was a function. This request and response cycle are objects. And you know how you can tell they're objects? Look, res dot. The dot always indicates that the thing that precedes it is an object. Okay? So I just want to point that out, that that's an object. Okay? So we're able to create multiple requests. Okay? And that's important because our server is going to have lots of resources that it wants to render. And these routes are really our pathway. So I'm going to say routes, AKA pathway to a resource. Remember, our server wants to give you stuff. It's a web server, right? So I'm going to show you my web page, and then you're going to click on stuff, and I'm like going to send new data to you so you can see it. That's the intent. The fact that you see things in your browser is because I, the web server, sent you everything you need to see. I, the web server, am not rendering it on my side. I'm packaging it and sending it to you. You are the one that needs to see it, okay? So we have it, and you know what? I could demo it like this too. If I went to developer tools here and I went to sources, I would actually see that my machine, here's the index file. It sent me my own index file, okay? So I'm getting the index file as a resource that was sent from the server to me, to this browser. I mean, I'm on the same machine, so it's kind of like, what? So let's take a look here. So request and response, very, very important. Just know that this, when I'm just gonna kind of break down this route here. So app is our Express server, right? Because we instantiated it here. I'm going to put .get is the method. We want to get data, okay? And then inside of get here, some data is the route, okay? Or path to resource. And then I'll say here, some data rec res. This is a callback. And we can just say here, rec res is the request response cycle. Okay? Both are objects. And as objects, they have different methods and properties that define them. Okay? I don't think request has a get method. I'm sorry. I don't think, request doesn't have it. Response has a send method. I'm sorry, the send method, right? I don't think request has a send method because that's incoming, right? You sent it to me, I already got it. There's no reason to have a send method. Response has the send method, okay? All right, we went through the process of shutting down the server. We know how to do that, right? Control, did I put that here? Control C will stop your server. I'm going to put here Control plus Z will not stop your server. Okay? It only frees up the terminal. Okay? So don't press Control Z. I always feel like I shouldn't even put that there because you know what you're going to do? Press Control Z at some point in time. I guarantee it. All right. So I'm going to go here. Remember how I said every time I edit this server, every freaking time I got to like restart the server? It's really, really annoying. I'm building out this application. I don't want to stop and restart the server. So I'm going to do this. Right now, I am going to stop my server, so I am going to do Control C. I'm going to take a look at my package.json. Here's my package.json, right? All I've installed is Express up to this point. Not a big deal. Cool. I'm going to install another package, and this package is going to be called NodeMon, this package right here. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to do npm, because that's how we install packages. I'm going to abbreviate install by using I. That's it, just the I. The package I want to install, and now I'm going to append this -G. G means global. That means I want this package to be installed globally on my terminal, which means every server will have access to NodeMon. I don't have to install it directly here. It will be installed in a global environment. So I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to watch this go. Okay, looks good. Looks good. Now you see how it didn't install it here? It didn't add it as a package, right? Because I'm telling it I want it to be installed globally on my machine, and it's accessible. Oh, no, maybe it did. Hold on a second. Did it? No, it didn't install. So it's not, it hasn't been added here, but it is, we can use it. And watch. I'm going to do, actually, maybe see, did it add in a node? I don't know if it added in node packages. Just going to go to NodeMon. See, did it? Nope, NodeMon is not here. Okay? So I'm going to go back to my terminal and do this time NodeMon and the name of the file that I want NodeMon to monitor. And that file is server.js. That's what I wanted to monitor. And, oh, it threw an error. What's this? Okay. Server, restart anytime or it's watching, starting server node. Oh, so look what it did here. What did it look like it's trying to do? Anyone tell me from that error what it looks like it's trying to do right now?
You misspelled server.
That's probably one of the reasons. Okay. All right, let's go. All right, so now it's working. But you will see that index file come up in a minute. It is relevant, but I did misspell it. So I'm going to go back here, just make sure it works, right? Here's my server. I'm going to get rid of the consoles too, because now it's just going to console log all of my request and response, and I'm seeing more stuff than I need to see. Just going to make sure my consoles are gone. Consoles are gone. I'm going to stop my server. I'm going to clear my terminal, and I'm going to do it one more time. Now I want you to see what happens. It started the server, and it gave me information now about the server, right? Hey, this is NodeMon. I'm 1.18.11. You can restart me anytime by enter RS. I'm watching everything for changes. I'm starting node server.js. It's doing this under the hood. Got it? Now, if I go back to my file and I edit this, see, here is your info. I could just say, I could change this text right now and say, hello again, or I don't know, update, installed NodeMon, right? I'm just going to say that. If I save it, it restarted NodeMon. If I refresh, Everything is done. I did not have to Control C. It restarted the server. Okay? Restarting due to changes. Any changes you make now and you save will initiate a restart of the server. It starts the server, and then you still have to refresh your page. Okay?
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
Is it normal if we get an npm error that we don't have access to this, that it was rejected by our user operating system?
That node mod, when you try to install it globally,
Yeah.
did you proceed it with sudo? If you ever have issues with installing things, you could proceed the install with the sudo keyword. Certain Macs are just kind of locked down a bit more. My Mac allows me to do it. I'm logged in as an admin, so anything that I do in the terminal is done as an admin. Not necessarily best practices, but sudo is the elevated admin account on a Linux machine.
So do sudo npm install that. So just put sudo before all that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I would have done npm sudo here. That's where I would have done it. If it's telling you don't have permissions to it, then yes, sudo should resolve that. It's going to ask you for your username and password or just your password. Does anyone else have issues with that? If you had an issue with permissions this time, then there's chances are you had it in previous classes where an install needed to be made and permissions. I remember Matt walking through one or two people like, oh, you got to do elevated permissions.
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks.
You're good. Sweet. All right. The last bit here is I mentioned that we do not want this node modules folder ever making it up to GitHub. GitHub's like, you know what? 1 million people today just pushed up their applications, right? I got web development schools all over the world. I got people working on applications. And you know what they don't want? They don't want their storage being bombarded by this stuff being pushed up, okay? They want to keep it streamlined on their server. And so in order to do that, we have to tell our package not to push up certain files or folders. And we can do that by using this git ignore file. It's a very special file, and a file that I'm just going to go up here and show you real quick, has been used on the root of our repo since we pushed it up. See how this git ignore? This git ignore contains, and this particular git ignore, we're not going to do this much stuff. As of right now, we're going to add one thing, but I want you to know that git ignore files can be configured to ignore as many files, as many folders, as many extensions as you want, okay? And so we are telling it to ignore, the important ones for us right now is this, node modules. These are the things that I don't want it to push up, node modules, okay? So I'm gonna go back, our express, I'm just gonna go back to the end here, and I am going to, just gonna get rid of this. All right. And I am going to create a new git ignore file. So I'm going to touch dot to say that it's hidden, git ignore. And here's the git ignore, it just appeared. Okay? If I click on git ignore, I would then add what I want it not to push up. So I'm going to get rid of the env for right now. I just copied and pasted what was in the other one. I'm giving it node and npm package category, and I'm just saying, hey, node modules is the thing right now that I don't want you to ever, never, ever, never, never push up. Okay? Otherwise, it's going to push it up. And now if I did this, if I did a git status, right? Boop. And I'm going to like take a look. I've done a bunch of stuff. Let me just see what it's taking a look at. Hey, it took a look at structure examples, my app.js, index, intro to the DOM, and then here's the things that I was kind of working on. These are previous things I never pushed up. Week 2, my first server. I think I have to get out of this. Let me get out. First server, get status. Let me see. Yeah, here. First server. It sees that first server is there, and I have some stuff in it. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to do git add, and I'm going to add everything right now. Bloop. Git status. Let me see. Here we go. It's pushing up the git ignore, right? It is not pushing up any of the node modules. See that? Now pushing up everything, okay? If I did the git add, I think if I did that, it should add everything. Yeah. Now I'm pushing up everything, but once again, the one thing we don't see here is package. We don't see node modules, okay? Here's my first server. Git ignore, package JSON, block, package JSON, server.js, but you know what we don't see is we don't see this one particular folder. I see all the others, yeah. All of these are right here, but I don't see this one, okay? I don't see it because we told it not to push it up. So now if I did do a git push, oh, I have to do a git pull because there's changes up there that I don't have. Now if I do a git push, actually I'm going to do a git remote -v. I just want to see that I have my origin. Here's the origin is going up to their server and upstream is to my own. I want to push it up 2 hours so that you have this for later, right? So I'm going to say git push. I could put origin master here, but without it, it defaults to origin master. So I could just do a git push. And if I do that, should have pushed everything up. Push. Oh, no, you know what? I didn't do a git commit. Give it a message. Here we go. Morning lecture pushed. Now if I do a git push, it'll push it all up. It's all done. If I go into here and I go into instructor examples, here's my server. Well, guess what I don't have? I don't have node modules. I have all the other key files, but I don't have node modules, okay? Now, there's only one shortcut that I'm going to show you here. And if we were to do this, see how this is main index? Let me clear this. This is main, and it says index. If I, by default, just do nodemon, I have to be inside the folder. So let me go back into instructor examples. Change directory into first server. All right. I'm going to do this. I'm going to say nodemon. It's going to error out. What's the error? It's right there. What's the problem? Can anyone tell me the problem?
Missing the index.js file.
Yeah, index.js file does not exist, correct? So it may make sense, instead of saying index.js, what if I change this to be server.js? What if I change it? Now if I do it, nodemon, it starts my server up perfectly fine because there is a server.js file, but there was not. So the package JSON, I just want to kind of stress, is other tools might reference the package JSON for information on how to start or how the server is configured. And because it's looking for that, just make sure that this is done or configured properly. I did say that this server, if I Control-C here, can produce errors like this file. Watch what happens if I get rid of that comma. On line 5, I'm going to get rid of the comma. I'm going to save it. Look what happens. Okay, what does this say? Well, this says, failed to parse the config file, package.json. unexpected string in JSON at position 1, 2, 3, right? We know that it was the comma. So I'm going to re-add the comma. I'm going to save it. Let's just make sure it starts. It starts. I'm going to stop it again. I am going to put single quotes around main. Not double quotes, single quotes. I'm going to start the server. Failed to parse config unexpected token single quote at JSON 101, right? Do you see how it also stands out here? I mean, it's pretty obvious that this thing main is kind of like a sore thumb because it's blue and it's like, this thing doesn't meet our standards. So I have to change that to be double quotes. Save it and it will work, okay? I just really want to point out those error messages here may seem so ambiguous that you're like unexpected token at position 101. That's crazy. I don't have a line 101 in this thing, right? You're going to have to go back and ask yourself, what was the last thing that you touched in here? What was the last thing that you changed? So if you do change this file manually for any reason, save it, start your server, make sure there's no errors. Don't go here and then go there and then go to the other place and then go to lunch and then come back because you're going to forget what the hell you did. And then you're going to have errors and you're going to be like, oh man, I don't know. I did so many things and I didn't listen to Joe. You should have listened to me. I'm just trying to give you the best advice possible. Cool. How are we feeling? Pretty good? It's not too much stuff, right? I mean, the only things we really did here were these handful lines of code, right? That's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if you consider that, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines of code was this morning's lecture in what you coded, and yet there is a lot happening under the hood at what you need to know, okay?
Hey Joe,
Yeah.
I'm still, mine is when I enter NodeMon, it's saying command not found.
Oh, so then my assumption, if you're getting command not found when you run NodeMon, then you didn't, I'm just going to go back to what the previous command was. You didn't do the G command. You see this G?
I did when I did the sudo install.
Oh, okay.
The
Try
G
doing it
was-
one more time. Can you share your screen?
Yeah. Oh, you have to stop sharing.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. My bad.
So this is where I did
You don't
that.
install. Oh, no. Okay. So you don't put the install before. It's actually telling you like command not found because get rid of the install between sudo and npm.
Okay.
That's right. Oh, no. It's npm.
And yeah.
Yeah. Node package manager I and then nodemon and then space -g. That's it. Hit enter. Ask you for your password and you'll be good to go. See?
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good times.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So let's hit the lab. Get you going in the morning lab. I'm going to just get out of full screen. And let me, I had already positioned it for the lab here. All right. Let's slack this out. And we are going to press starting on the server. Oink. Morning lab. Lab. All right. Boom. There we go. Just slacked it out. get you into the breakout rooms.